good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most valuable 90 minutes of your day. I'm Michael, the MC and Opportunity Ambassador for today's adventure and today's show, When Loss Has Unexpected Benefits. Before we begin, let's meet our fabulous co host, Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator,
Hi, I was just asking people to join us.
Willow, our trauma consultant,
Hi, everyone.
Deirdre, our development strategist, who's going to lead today's show,
Hey, thanks for coming.
and Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love, beautiful people. Great to be with you.
All right, everybody. So this sounds like a very interesting topic. Where do we begin, Deirdre?
Yeah, sure. I was going to just do a brief review from last week, from our last show. So, what is grief? Grief is a label assigned to all the emotions associated with dealing with the loss. Yeah, you guys, we kind of touched on that a lot. And just, I wanted to kind of just dive a little bit into that. So, there are certain stages of grief that will always be followed. That's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. Did you guys want me to unpack those a little bit for you? Yeah?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. So denial is having feelings of numbness and alternative explanations for how you're feeling. So you kind of don't know you're going through grief. You just get these feelings that are negatively kind of bringing you down for some reason. Anger is the loss of control or failure to prevent the loss. And then you'll move on to bargaining, which is a yearning and longingness for it to go, for the feelings to go. And then that's going to seep into depression of hopelessness and helplessness. And then acceptance. Acceptance is radical, and I define radical meaning that you have to radically accept it, that the loss has occurred, and determine where to proceed from here. Um, so, what types of things have you guys lost that you need to grieve? That's what I would like to know.
Oh, I was muted. It could be silly stuff. Like I remember one time I was really upset because I broke a mug that I brought with me from Poland, and it felt like an end of an era because I won't get any more mugs from childhood, and I only got to bring two to Canada. You know what I mean? So it's like a stupid thing. It's a mug. Who cares, right? But it like meant something, even though it didn't mean anything until that minute. And then I broke it, and then it meant something.
Yeah, there was still meaning in that. Um, how about you, Mike?
That's I there's I guess there's quite a few things I could think of. The first thing that comes to mind currently is I've kind of decided where my home ground is, and that's Acapulco. But with that decision comes like the lack of travel to places like my original home and seeing those people and family members and so forth. So to some degree, if they don't come to see me, I don't see them, and that's kind of an interesting uh, dilemma I have, I guess.
Mm, yeah, so that loss of uh, usual connection that you get. How do you manage that feeling of I just don't have I'm not going to be seeing my family because they have to, it's very expensive. They have to get on flights and travel, so the regular visits are less. How do you manage that?
Well, it's it's a fundamental decision for me. I am kind of like opposed to the U.S. government, and so it's a little bit more than just the cost and so forth. But because of that, it that's what I got to revisit is like my values. What is important to me? What's most important to me? And most important to me is like being the example for people that want to stand on their principles, I feel like I've got to do what I think is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but at
right.
the
So
same
that's a
sorry, at the same time you're feeling the loss of the other choices. You know what that makes me
yeah,
think?
that's
That makes me think of when I moved to Canada. And even though I was a child, I was 16 when I moved to Canada, or 15 and a half, something like that. I knew that I will always be missing something because I will never actually feel at home in Poland again, because I was not going to go back to Poland for a few years. And I knew that for a couple of years at least. It was like the 80s, right? And I will forever be missing Poland. But then if I go to Poland, I'll forever be a stranger because I won't be from Poland anymore. So it'll be that I'll forever be torn from that moment on. And I realized that on the plane coming forward. It's kind of a scary thought. Like in irrevocable change.
yes, that's that acceptance. It's not just acceptance. It's a radical acceptance. That's it's a different type of acceptance to move past the grief. How about you, Willow?
Oh, man, just listening to everyone else's stories, I was like, oh yeah, I got a story like that. I got a story like that. And then now my mind is just like, wow, girl, you've had a lot of loss. And I'm just kind of like absorbing that for a second. I was reminded of all the times that I've moved. I never realized how much it affected me. We've moved about every 2 years. Actually, one of my very first memories was remembering that I had a very exaggerated attitude, but that was what I wanted. But I knew that I didn't actually feel that way. I was just acting that way. And my mom had just unfinished packing the last box. And I think we had been living there for like 6 months to a year. And I just like really, with a lot of sass and attitude, was like, so when are we going to move again? You know, like you just unpacked the last box. So when are we going to move again? And I don't remember what the attitude was, but I remember that was something that I was supposed to be upset about. That's what everyone was like, oh, moving must be hard. I didn't really give it much thought until I got to be older. And then I was like, it'd be really nice to have a place that you could just go home. That taught me, or not taught me, made me think of a deeper memory of like the loss of going back home, like to Texas. Like it's not really home anymore, but it's where I grew up. So there's plenty of stuff that I don't want to have anything to do with down there. Like most of it, the bugs are horrendous. The weather is horrendous. A lot of the people are horrendous. There's just a lot of horrendous shit down in the South, especially the farther south you go. And, but there is like a sense of loss, like of home, where it's like, I never really had it. Like, it amazed me. My husband would tell us stories about, like, oh, yeah, back when, before they were in kindergarten, we used to all hang out together. And I was like, you've known each other? Like, you've hung out with each other your entire lives. And I realized my husband was actually, he never moved. Like, until he moved out of the house, they didn't move. I was like, what? You've never moved out of your house? Like, you were actually born and you were raised in the same house? It didn't make any sense to me. But yeah, there was a lot of loss there. Just constantly having to restart over and over again.
So during that moment when you're a child in childhood, you didn't kind of acknowledge all of that as loss or grief. It was kind of just your reality. Whereas now you're an adult, to stop and pause for a bit and go, oh yeah, I felt sad in that moment. I had to leave friends again, and then I had to make friends all over again.
I'm not sure if like now I feel like the loss of it. I'm not sure I really did at the time. Either it just never occurred to me that was something I needed to be upset about, and I was just upset for an unknown reason. But I also have a lot of memory loss right around that time. So there's a lot of sad feelings and loss around like the lack of having memories, which is another issue that we can touch on later.
Yes.
And just before we move to another issue, I wanted to say hello to some of our listeners who texted us. Danny says hello from Krakow. Hello, cześć. And Heather, our lovely Heather, says that she relates a lot with Willow. She remembers not unpacking stuff at one point because she was like, what's the point? We'll be moving away again anyway. Did I do the voice right, Heather?
Yeah, there's like certain stuff that you kind of go through this list where you're like, no, only the essential stuff gets unpacked. The stuff that I have to have out that just like immediately screams me and makes this area mine, and the rest is just kind of gonna wait until I'm sure about the area, because you still want to be able to pack quickly, but you want to make it feel like home. There's like a whole process to it.
Yeah. It sounds like you had really good strategies in place to make sure that you didn't dive too deep into that grieving process until you were ready to be able to handle it.
Yeah, distraction or like escaping the situation via disassociation was generally my tactic, my go-to. I got pretty good at it.
Yeah. You are very good at it. And Dennis, I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. Cześć to my brother in Krakow as well. He's tuning in with his girlfriend right now. When you ask your question, three situations popped up like that in my mind. It's probably also because I touched upon one of them just in the last show. So when you said loss situations with loss and grief that cause grief, for me, maybe one of the most outstanding ones would have been the situation with my sister who passed away just last year, and I touched upon that in the last show. Then there was another big one many years ago, which I went more into detail in the face reading episode with Agnieszka some time ago, where I lost basically all belongings that I had on me, for the weeks and months ahead, just like that. And that felt like a huge loss in the very moment. And then there was another one which was also really a quite impactful point in my life where I lost the engine of a backhoe that I was operating, and I didn't lose it. It wasn't like dropping out of my pocket, but it got stolen overnight. And but it wasn't really just about the engine, but it was about the fact that represented the end, or it seemed like that the end of about almost 10 years of work that I had put into a project that I was working on, constructing a center on a mountainside not too far from Kingston, Jamaica. And so what the common factor of those three situations, which seemed completely devastating in the moment when they happened to me, is that the loss and the grief, it set in immediately, and it was almost overwhelming. But then there was something, there was a different process that also set in, and it was very subtle, a very subtle process of, it came along with the loss, but there was also a certain appreciation of what was there to be appreciated. And I thought that was a very interesting process that set in. So in the immediate moment, of course, there was, in some instances there was adrenaline, there was a lot of things going on, but the more I was able to kind of calm down, I could actually really quickly after that drama moment, after this trauma, I could actually also feel that something else, something subtle really was also there. And then I was able to shift my focus on that and actually see that really what I was weeping for, what I was mourning, was not necessarily something bad, but it was also something that I cherished very much and that I loved very much. And so that is something, my mind went there when I was listening to you guys explaining. And so I feel that there, in every loss, if loss is one side of the coin, there's also the other side of the coin. And the other side is always there. We might not always see it because, if you look at the coin from one side flat, then we only see the side of the loss if you're overwhelmed in the moment. But then, if you really look, and if you find a way to turn it around, or then to switch your position, you might be able to look at it from the other side, and you see that the thing that you're mourning and the thing that you're grieving for is actually, what delighted you in the first place. And so it becomes then a question of where you're looking from, and that is there's freedom in that choice.
Yes, that's right. Seeing it, feeling it, and being able to feel that deeply allows for it to be acknowledged, and then your brain, unexpected opportunities, seeing different potentials, avenues, all creativity comes about. For me personally, it was having no grandparents left. So 10 years ago, I had all my grandparents, and I get cards for any type of celebration, birthday, Christmas, Easter, anniversary, or whatever, just cards. And I get like a nice little $20 note in there, and I love you. It was the highlight of my year to have these cards come to me. And then when my grandmother died, my last grandparent died, it hit me hard. I still feel grief from it, because that was it. I don't get any cards anymore. I still don't. And like, it was hard to kind of deal with that, because it'd come around, especially for my birthday, having this since I was, a little child, getting these birthday cards, to not having anything. I think a couple of years ago, I completely forgot it was my birthday. So because it's Halloween, I was so focused on doing the Halloween thing for the kids. And I got to like 9:00 at night, and I broke down crying because I had no reminders that it was my birthday. And so how I kind of came through that is I started sending cards to everybody that I care about. So if you're going to get a Christmas card this year, Mike, I will. If you got a Christmas card from me, it's because that's meaningful to me. That kind of makes the sorrow that I feel okay, because I know that it brought me so much joy, and I would hope that it would bring you guys joy receiving those cards from me. That's how I made the grief more meaningful to me.
I had the
Mike,
card you sent somewhere.
hold on.
I was going to show it. What?
Mike, be warned. This girl fills her sorrow with confetti.
I barely caught it.
I barely caught it before it fell out of the envelope. It's still sitting in my craft room.
Where is
Mexico,
I
I'll
had
probably
your
get
card.
I'll probably get it about this time. I'll probably get it about June or something in Mexico. So
Knowing
that's how
Mike,
efficient their mail system
Send it
is.
now.
knowing Mike, he'll be standing next to the pool. He'll open the card, and then confetti will go into the pool. And then he's gonna have to go with
you'll
a
know
tea
that
strainer to pull it all out.
You'll be thinking of me every time. Damn it.
Every single piece of confetti, you're gonna be like, Deirdre did this. Deirdre.
It's one piece per day, so you'll be occupied for another year.
But grief is not logical. Earlier, when you guys were talking, I was remembering when my parrot died. It was like a big trauma thing for me, because she was my companion for 20 years, nearly. It was like 18 and a half or something like that. So 20 years is easier to say, but it was a really, really long time. It was most of my... Oh, by the way, Dennis talking to Colleen, not muting himself, reminded me. Hi, Colleen. Thank you for the comment. Moving 5 times. It's gotta suck. And hello, Shambhavi, too. In any case, so this parrot, it was horrible. So what happened, it was this Christmas Eve, and we were all sitting around the circle and opening presents, and my parrot called for me, and this dog, my sister-in-law's dog, ran downstairs, and we didn't notice because there was a lot of noise and children opening presents and stuff, and he brought my parrot and dropped her at my feet, and she died from fright in that moment, and it was very traumatic. But then we couldn't bury her, so we had to like lay her to rest in a frozen river or a freezing river. And then I remember for the next couple of weeks, I kept wondering if she was cold. Like, I really had a concern that she was cold. And I also stopped myself from buying her food. I was like, oh, we're almost out of parrot food. I have to buy some food. And only then did I realize that I think about her so many times a day. Like if I'm eating breakfast, I'm like, oh, there's a little bit has to go to her, for her little treat. And you know what I mean? Every single 10 times a day, all these little thoughts, oh, I better buy a papaya. She loves papayas, And so it was really hard
I did that.
for
I
Max.
did that after both of Max and Cody, different ways. Like Cody was not really particular about where he laid down. He laid down anywhere next to people. So for a long time, I kept his ashes near where I slept because I thought that would make him in spirit feel more comfortable. And I'm sure my husband thought I was insane. And I kind of felt insane because I was like, I know he's not in this box. He's not in these ashes, but it just made me feel better. And then he died a really traumatic death. He got into a fight in our backyard while I was not home with our roommates' dogs, untrained dogs. And it was bad, dog fights. Don't even need to go in any more detail. But when Max died, he used to lay on anything that was soft, the softest thing possible. And one day I was cleaning out one of my bowls. Yeah, he was
Poor
a whippet.
thing.
So
it was like all bones.
Yeah, it was all
He
bones
needed
and
soft.
skin and muscle. So he didn't really have padding, and he would lay on the softest thing. And if it was black colored, he especially liked it. So I had a piece of rabbit fur, which sadly is all strictly white. So I'm sure he's disappointed in that. But it's the softest thing I could find, and I sacrificed it. And now it sits underneath his and Cody's ashes on our altar, just because it made me feel better. It made me feel like they were at peace. Like I'd finally, like I had done the last thing that I could do for them. It was kind of a strange way of like letting go of the responsibility, because like, yeah, there's still days where like you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, I need to feed the dog. No, I don't. Or you get home and you're like, oh my God, I've left the dog there for 6 hours. No, I haven't.
That's the denial stage. And that placement of them having now that this is their special place, that's the radical acceptance if it was in physical form. So Agnieszka, when we... Okay.
Well, I was gonna say that makes a lot of sense. I just realized what that was. I experienced that with Cody's death because every time I'd whistle, he'd come. If he didn't come, there was something wrong. He was hurt. Someone had taken him. Something. And the first day I woke up after he had passed away, and I went out and back and I whistled for the dogs, and just for a split second I was like, and he's not coming around the corner. Like it was the first moment where I was like, oh man, like my brain and my body did not want to accept it. I was like, he's dead. He died yesterday. And then my body was like,
yeah, but also
he's coming around the corner.
Max died from a heart attack. So 1 minute he was playing and the next minute he was just like, so there was no warning. There was not that there was a warning with our other pets, but that's another form of trauma, right? Your family member is there happy, joyful, and then suddenly, boom, not.
Right? So what would have been some of the unexpected benefits for you from that you would have gotten out of those?
Finally, somebody asked the key question.
Well, for mine with Max, specifically, if it had happened any other way, I would have been more devastated because at the moment that it happened, both my husband and I were home. So he died with us. We were with him. And had we known about this at any other time, like we couldn't have left him alone. He could have died alone. Like we literally could have come home and he would have been dead in our house. And I was like, I couldn't have handled that. I would have much rather have been there, as sucky as it was, as emotional as it was. I would have rather been there than not. And I was like, if that's the price I have to pay, then that's what I got to do. I don't know. It made me feel like it was like a silver lining kind of moment where it's like, okay, this is something good.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Cora Jane, I used to be paranoid of finding her at the bottom of her cage dead. I'd be like, oh no, I have to feed her the best food and da 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 da. You know what I mean? I was always so very careful. And I think that's why it took so much out of me when she died, because I was so overprotective of her, and I always wanted her to have the best of everything. And she can't be inside, she has to be outside too, so we need to have a special cage so she can see the sunshine, all this stuff. And then I couldn't protect her in the last, but I was there, and my voice was the last voice she heard, so maybe it's better.
So when I first met you, you were still going through grief from Lorna Jane.
When I first met you, it was like 2 months.
I want to
Since
make
she
sure I'm
passed away.
pronouncing her right. Is it Cora Jane?
Cora, Cora.
Okay. I just want to
Oh, I
make sure I
said
was getting her.
Cora Jane, yeah.
Cora. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so, do you remember how we started the conversation about it? I think you were just
It was like a
you
year
just it was
ago.
just by
More than a year
it was
ago.
just by random that we were talking about that, and you were talking about how you had to move at the same time, and you've just been going through a lot lately, and you were wishing that Corner Jane was there to with you, because she's always been there with you.
You're gonna make me cry.
That process. So so I just wanted to let people know how I helped you recognize that it was grief. So we're talking for a bit, and I had a feeling that it might be grief. And so I asked her to, start giving me some photos. I'm very, I feel like pictures are worth 1,000 words when you kind of just can't put your finger on it. And she sent me a couple of pictures, and then we continued talking. And the last picture she showed me was this beautiful big heart with rainbow colors, like watercolor painting all through it. And there was just this really black spot, like not in the middle of the heart, just kind of off to the side of this beautiful big, like just a normal love heart. And then we kind of went on that, like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of black there. Like, black could be sad. How you feel sad. And we kind of continued on from that. And then we went on to that, she's in grief from Corner Jane. And we worked through that. How did that process go for you, having experienced that?
Well, obviously, I'm still because I am getting all wispy-eyed. But no, I mean, it's been a long journey, and there are, to answer Dennis's questions from my perspective, there are many benefits. I mean, it's selfish, but for almost 20 years, I had to clean the bird cage every couple days with poops and stuff. And I don't have to do that anymore. Picking up dog poop is easier. I also was able to get a dog. I wanted a dog for a really long time, but I didn't feel like, maybe the parrot and the dog wouldn't get along. And she was my baby. And, 20 years. She was with me through all these moves, a couple marriages. She was the constant in my life, and all these other things would change. My friends would change, the cities I lived in would change, I would have different cars and different boyfriends and different husbands, but my parrot was the same. And then my parrot was gone, and I was bereft of anything. I had nothing, because it was my constant companion. But I have wanted to get a dog for a really long time. And so a year after, or no, not even 8 months after Cora Jane passed away, I ended up getting a puppy, or a small dog. Not a puppy.
So in other ways, in other ways, it took away the false belief that there is a constant outside of you in the world.
I don't know, because I still wear a necklace that represents her.
Yeah.
I bought myself this little rose heart triangle, and I kind of feel like it's her spirit that always goes with me, and it makes me feel better.
Oh, it was that opportunity. You saw an opportunity that, oh, well, I'm allowed to get a dog now, and I'm okay with having that relationship now. And you have Luna.
Yeah, Luna's awesome.
Yeah, she's right.
Okay, talk to somebody else for a minute.
Okay, all right, moving on. So types of grief, our next section. So there are different types of grief. There's anticipatory grief, normal grief, complicated grief, and masked grief. Would you guys like me to unpack that a bit?
Definitely.
I don't know if you knew that there was different types of grief. So anticipatory grief is that you have time to prepare yourself. You know the person is passing, they are dying, and you have the opportunity of that time to accept the loss, finish unfinished business, have a life review, and resolve conflicts. Anticipatory grief. Normal grief is just the normal feelings associated with grief. Oh my gosh, I just ripped my favorite pair of jeans and all my jeans are in the wash now and I have to go to work in like 5 minutes and I have to change and I really wanted those pair of jeans.
Isn't that
just normal grief?
That's when you're like, oh crap, I gotta wear a skirt today. All my skirts are clean.
Really
You're Willow,
like
you always wear skirts.
Okay, all right. Complicated grief. Complicated grief is two different types. It can be chronic, which is where grief is continued over excessive long periods of time. I don't want to mean like excessive. Somebody's grief is there, and I mean that heaviness, not that, oh, I remember corner and it just kind of touches my heart every time. That little bit of dark's going to be there. That's okay. It's just kind of letting it envelop you, and it's been years. Chronic grief. And then there's delayed grief. That's the suppressed or postponed feelings of it, because either consciously or unconsciously, to avoid the pain of the loss, that delayed grief.
But can that be something relieving as well? Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. I was wondering the delayed one, like if that's, you know, I feel that like I came across people and children, youths, like I work with, who I think I would guess as a protective measurement would not allow the grief at the time being because it was too overwhelming, or the situation wouldn't even allow for it, and who then if they were helped or if they got assistance and they were allowed to actually live out that grief, or I would have done that like with drawing, for example, interviewing, or just like talking about certain traumatic situations in their lives with them, sometimes in front of a group eventually, then that grief would kind of set in, and it was sometimes long gone. But I felt that was something, it was like a huge relief as well. So I felt that you know, would help them actually. Would that be the last form of grief that you were touching upon?
Yes, the delayed grief is consciously or unconsciously. So consciously would be just like, no, I'm not doing this, not right now. Whereas unconsciously would be your mind going, no, you are not in a safe place to feel this right now. So when you grieve, remember, your body instantly triggers you to slow down. And when you slow down, you're at risk of not being on top of things. So if you don't have that safe environment to be able to grieve, your mind won't let it happen.
You see this a lot in complex PTSD, especially children, because if you're in an unsafe situation, or even just if you can't handle it, sometimes you can consciously just disassociate. You deny that everything is happening. And it's literally, it is a grieving process. Usually when my clients have to like meet that part of themselves and accept it, there's a lot of crying, there's a lot of grief for that part, because they had to take on a very burdensome role very young, and it's heartbreaking. So yeah, I see that one. I see delayed grief. It's probably the most prominent one that I deal with in trauma counseling.
So how do you set an environment or an atmosphere that can happen in a beneficial way?
I have one more. There was masked grief. Can I just quickly add that one?
Please.
So masked grief is survivor grief of trauma. Is not aware of, you're not aware of the behaviors associated with grief. You just know that you're having these certain feelings and you're behaving in certain ways, and you don't know what the cause is. You're unaware of the grief. Having experienced a traumatic event as a child, it's not known to you, but yet you still suffer from it. Your mind has masked it. So yeah, please. Well, I have a question for everybody, if you'd like, Dennis, or did you want to continue?
Sure.
Okay,
Go ahead. So,
No, I'm going to be continuing on with, can anyone recognize, experience any of these types of grief?
I've got a great example of masked grief, and that is a movie called The Razor's Edge, the old version with Tyrone Power and Gene Tierney. I think it's 1940, 1941, something like that. But like this guy, he can't, he was in the World War, and essentially his best buddy got killed, like saving him. And so he's basically got everything he ever wants, but he can't, he won't accept it. He's like, I need to know why I'm alive, And so he ends up going on this like trek across the world. And, to everybody else, it's like what is he, crazy? But he's just trying to find the meaning behind what his life is about. I think it's a great movie. But check it out sometime.
Thank you. Would anyone like to chime in on that? So for me,
I have a picture. I have a picture of my parrot. I wanted to show you guys.
Oh, please! I feel. Oh my gosh, she's beautiful.
Of course.
Maybe we can go to the
I'm
speaker
sorry.
view.
I feel so sorry. I didn't mean to trigger you, darling. Hey,
Oh no,
so
it's all
sorry.
good. It's all good. It's all good. It's perfect. Go for it.
That's part of what the healing process of grieving is. I mean, not many people want to do it on live, but it's awesome that you can create this space where people do feel comfortable enough to actually grieve, to have the emotion. Someone explained IFS, which doesn't necessarily just deal with grief, but grief is one big thing that they do. But they explain sometimes how self is a part that, imagine if your body is a temple. We've all heard that term or the phrase. And self is the god or the goddess of this temple. Now, sometimes when they're really threatened or the noise gets too loud, there's too many people fighting, their temple has become a desecration. It's not to them anymore. They leave. And so when the village people or the other parts, the people who visit the temple, they realize that the god or goddess has left, fix it. They figure out how to fix it. And then they go and search for the god and goddess. And they go, oh, look, we fixed it. And they're like, yeah, but I still have to tell you how I felt. I still have to have my reaction to this. That's what it's like. Like, you can't just go up to someone and be like, hey, I fixed the problem. And so that you can stop them from having the reaction. And we do it to ourselves. We stop ourselves logically. We're like, I know why I'm doing this, so that you don't have the reaction, hoping that you can just skip it. And it's one of our biggest downfalls, at least one of mine, trying to skip the feeling and be like, I understand it logically. That's all. That's enough. It's not.
Yeah, but it's not. Your body has to accept it, that you have acknowledged it. Thanks for mentioning that, Mike. That's also what he was experiencing, was survival guilt. So guilt is a feeling of grief, and there are different types of guilt, and that's better for another show. Dennis, do you have anything to add?
Well, you just said guilt is. I had a thought on guilt, which is that guilt also oftentimes is being used or being artificially installed in us or in other people in order to control and manipulate them. But then, as you said, that's maybe like a theme for another show. But I remember a question that I was going to ask Willow earlier, because she was mentioning that that form of delayed grief was one of the forms that that you are dealing with mostly with your clients. So I was wondering how you would set an atmosphere and an environment that would facilitate the release of that form of grief with your clients. Do you have any experiences there?
Yes, I'd say I have about 2 steps that I can think of right off the bat. Is first, I use proper labels. Abuse is abuse. Abusers are abusive. Like, I label things properly so that the mind can remap what's going on. And sometimes that's all that's needed. Sometimes if you look at someone in the eyes and you say, you know that was not something a child should have had to handle, or a young person, or maybe you didn't have the tools, like you were not equipped to handle this. A lot of times they'll end up breaking down and grieving right then and there. Like they can't stop it. It just happens. And that's when I employ like self-soothing tactics. And if it's someone that I'm personally close with, I'll go give them a hug. You know, I'll do the soothing if I can. But it's really hard because to get people who have delayed their grief to trust enough, it depends on why they delayed it. Maybe it wasn't a safe place and there was no one around to make it safe for them. How do they know that it's safe now? Like, it's really hard. You have to find, like Deirdre and I had a session a couple of weeks ago, and I after the fact, I texted her explicitly and I said, I could tell you were really tired. I have watched myself chase around other people's parts for hours, just trying to get their part to trust me enough to tell me anything, to be honest, to tell me their name, what they're doing there, how old they are. I kind of lost my train of thought a little.
So you're basically helping them to define what's going on and to define where they are, to put, like you said, to label it, to put words to it. I wonder if that's, well, I can see how that even, can be like a little self-help tool there, and I see what I was trying to voice earlier, like of, taking a proper perspective at things is just another way of saying what you just expressed, because it's, sometimes we're stuck or we're overwhelmed and we cannot really define the situation how it is, or we have other programs that are running or experiences that are really influencing the way we see things. So sometimes it takes outside help or somebody else to give us a perspective that actually will help us to understand what really is going on. So that is what I heard when you what you just said.
That's right. That you don't know. If you don't know that you're chronically feeling down and it's for a reason, because you need to grieve for something, and then you're just bombarded with all of this stuff, negative stuff, just to keep you in that down state, you're never going to be able to even have that radical acceptance and put it in its place to grow.
Willow is moving energy with, like, sometimes when there's a lot of emotional stuff, people yawn because they're moving energy, and she's like,
I just thought it was because I got up early and I walked for an hour and a half.
Yeah, but you weren't yawning in the beginning.
That is true.
Are you ready to
you're getting in oxygen into the system?
Yeah.
Get more oxygen. So
a lot of clients do that. Sorry, Deirdre, a lot of clients do that during a session. They either burp or fart or yawn or sneeze or some kind of a thing like that, where you've hit on a nerve, on something that really they need to look at, and then their body will react and expel something, whatever it is.
They get the burping,
or they have to go to the bathroom
the
suddenly.
and the coughing. Yeah, that happens all the time. Especially, I love it when some of my clients are starting to realize. They'll be like, I'll be right back. I gotta use the restroom. And then they'll come back and they'll be like, my body did not like what you just said. And I'm like, oh, okay, you have been listening. Cool.
As long as they don't run away from the session, it's all good.
Strange thing about the yawning, though. This is something, I don't know if it's any way related. It's just something strange that I've noticed. The more you point it out, like if every time I yawn, someone were to mention that I yawn, I will yawn, but it will never be a full yawn. It'll be like a half yawn that never is completed, and then I will yawn repeatedly until I get a full yawn out.
No.
The most annoying thing ever.
It is annoying. I hate yawns. It's like wanting to sneeze, and it's just like you're building, and it's just like you got all this preparation, and then it just dies down. It's just like, no, where's my damn sneeze?
Yeah. All right, so back to grief. What are the benefits of grief?
Sure.
So
I was going to talk to.
once we work through all those different things, will there be a place? Well, I mean, I guess I'm at that place. I only get like emotional now if I actually talk about her. I don't Cora Jane. I don't actually think about it throughout the day, or I don't necessarily grieve it. I mean, when I see another bird, I kind of think about it, but that's about it. Of course, there are lots of birds outside.
Yeah, you put it.
But another parrot, right. Another parrot.
Yeah, you had a
There's
radical
lightness.
acceptance. There's a place for her now.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I usually feel like a sense of lighterness, like literally almost a burden has been lifted. I can breathe easier. It's a really strange sensation, to be honest.
I would describe it as a sense of detachment, because a huge loss or the perception of a loss, if you analyze it properly and if you look at it properly, and you recognize that you, as I even said last show, that who's the one who lost anything, and what did you really lose? It helps me to detach from those things that really and truly are part of the ups and downs that we're living. And again, Khalil Gibran has a great quote again, which says, "When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight." That sounds true for me.
Yeah. Always the Khalil Gibran. Smart guy.
All right. I'll move on to our next section. Exercises, overcoming grief, visualizing a positive future. This would be a journaling exercise that anyone could do. Asking questions to help you move forward. Who am I? Where am I going? How will I get there?
Oh, wait.
And when will I know?
If Dennis was asking, it would be who is it feeling that, right? Not who am I, but who's the person feeling it?
No.
No?
It is the person who's feeling it. Who am I? This helps with your new identity with the loss. You're a new person now. That experience, that person, that object is gone from existence, away from you. And now you need to figure out who you are as a person. You have an yeah, go.
So you're basically you're consciously creating a new person then. So it's you're creating a new role. If you're really cutting through everything though, then instead of creating a new person, another way, another possibility would be to cut through the real who am I? Because then, so that would be beyond the old person and the new person and any person who did it at all. So that would be cutting through to that which really and truly won't feel any loss, because that which knows that there is nothing that can be lost at all.
Yeah, that higher level of being. That's right. So that would be that's understanding who am I? Who am I without this? Well, you still, like Dennis said, you're still you. But it's creating that with that loss, that having to not have that in your life anymore. And so the next question you would be journaling was, where am I going? This is to create a goal for a new attachment when you're ready to go to use a project, a goal, another person, love, an experience to move forward on that. This is a logotherapy term. So to go beyond yourself is to have an experience, go out into nature, do something with a new experience, or it could be with another, doing volunteering, giving yourself outside yourself, because you're already experiencing grief internally. You need to realign back with reality. Remember the picture with the bubble and the black. You need to get back in. You need to get touch with that. So putting goals, then going, where am I going now? It won't help with the grief. It will just help reconnect back into reality from that, with that, while you're holding that grief in that moment. In spite of the grief, you're still going to touch with reality. Does anyone have anything to add with that?
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys have on top of your mind have any of the things, of the practical things, just as Deidre was just listing a few of them. Do you have anything on top of your mind that you practically did when you came across that loss to pull you back up and to put you back together again?
I moved across the country.
I would say that you found Luna.
Well, yeah, but first, after I stopped crying all the time, then we moved to a different apartment, but we were still in the same province. I didn't like it there. And then without her, I was just like, yeah, this sucks. So I packed up our van and Eric drove us across to Victoria, to where my parents were. I went home. I ran away home. That's what I did. I was like, screw this. This sucks. And now without her, it sucks even bad. So even worse. So I'm going home. And yeah, I drove across the country. And when I got to my parents' house, I wasn't well because I didn't have a good time before Cora Jane died. And then after she died, I really wasn't well last spring. And so, being in my parents' property, like being restored to health, my mom bringing over nice little salads and things and helping me, and then getting Luna and going outside every day with Luna, that really helped bring me back to living.
Wow, it sounds like
so
that loss. Sorry, go ahead, Tilly.
I said she found that safe space.
And you, Dennis? Sounds like the loss what?
Sounds like that loss helped you to move on, to move along, to maybe do something that that you were supposed to do but you couldn't do. Not that she hindered you in that way, but that situation, by how you were just talking about it, seemed that it actually helped you to move along on in a different aspect of your life.
You know what's weird? So here's a weird story about loss. So when I first moved to Canada from Poland, right, I was kind of angry about leaving Poland. Like I went from the acceptance on the plane to being resentful of my parents because they took me to this country and everything was weird and I didn't like it and I wanted to go home, but I couldn't go home because I lived here now and it was just weird. And so I was really angry, and we were living in British Columbia, where I'm living now, actually in the same house, just on the other side, the other half of the duplex. And I really didn't like it here. And it was so weird because I was so critical of British Columbia, of Victoria. I was like, oh, I don't like it. It's all a bunch of people. I can't get along. I have to leave. So I left and I went first to Vancouver, and then I went to Kelowna, then I went to Calgary, further and further and further away, right? And then I was like, no. Then I went all the way to Quebec on the other side of the country, almost to the other coast. And it was just like, no, I have to get away. And then when I came back, after driving all the way across the country and coming back, I realized that in all of those places I've been in, I was looking for Victoria. I was like, oh, I wish that there were lakes I could swim in. I wish that I could do gardening more months of the year than here. I wish, and I realized that all those things, I wish this, I wish that, all were okay happening in Victoria. I could have done them here. There are 5 lakes in my neighborhood alone, or within 5-minute driving distance. There, we can grow things more of. This is the warmest place in Canada, and all of these wishes. I wish this, and why is this here, and why is like that, all of those things. And I was always complaining about all these. All my complaints are solved by just moving back here. So that's weird, and that's some kind of a mind fuck. Yeah, I wanted to say mind fuck. Because how could I be angry at this place for taking me away from home and saying, no, I don't like it, because that's where I was so resentful. And then for the next 20 years, looking for this place in all those other places. Analyze it, psychologists. Analyze it. Michael, what do you have to say about that?
It sounds like delayed grief. It sounds like when you moved there, you couldn't acknowledge your grief over losing the old place. So you assigned blame to the new place. And then from then on, you couldn't see it. You couldn't see that felt like home. So subconsciously you were looking for it.
Yeah. But having green, like
Yeah.
flowers in your yard all year round, like every month of the year, having, having lakes where I can swim or go paddleboarding within 2-minute drive, 5-minute drive if I want to go to the further one, that's just so cool. I've always wanted this stuff. Being able to go outside in my pajamas most of the year and just take the dog for a pee and without having to put a big coat on or big shoes on because it's fairly warm anyway. And even if there's a bit of snow, it's not that cold. Danny says that this is proof that each so-called loss is a gateway to a new, greater experience. Nice, philosophical. Is that your sister-in-law, Dennis?
Yes.
That's my brother.
That's your brother. Cool. I just thought Danny was a girl's name. I don't know why.
Has an I
North
at the end.
America.
In English, a boy's name with an I at the end instead of a Y is a girl's name.
It's
Oh,
short
is that
for
what?
Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah.
Okay, next question. How will I get there? This is the next question in the journaling exercise.
I thought how is none of our
Um,
business. We're supposed to give that up to God. How?
All right, how will I get there? Building relationships. What are you doing with that new goal, that outsideness, outside of yourself to get touch with reality? I would say trusting social relationships are how you're going to get there. That
I didn't have
connection.
any. When Cora Jane died, I was alone. I just had Eric. I didn't have anybody. I had no friends. I was in a foreign place. They spoke a foreign language and nobody liked me.
But what was Toastmasters like?
That was before in Calgary. I wasn't in Quebec.
Okay.
Quebec was just the
Okay.
desolate desert of my life.
I experienced that loss with Max too because I used to have really bad anxiety, and well, I still have really bad anxiety, but it used to be so bad that I just wouldn't talk to people because I would be so embarrassed about what I would say. And I just learned everything about whippets that I could because my husband's dog was a whippet. So I'd take Max out on a walk, and there was bound to be someone. I used to call them his admirers because there was always someone who was like, "Oh my gosh, your dog is so skinny and so soft and so cute, and he's so adorable." I'm like, "Yeah, until he wakes you up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go outside and chase a cat." But okay. But I realized that I was using Max as like a social icebreaker where like I could talk about Max. I could talk about all the cool things about him. And I eventually I developed almost this like persona as like the person who knew all about, like, I could tell anyone his entire like ancestry and where whippets came from, and it really opened a lot of conversations and allowed for a lot of social connection that I never would have gotten before. And it's been severely lacking since he passed away.
I thought that your cool skirts would be a conversation piece. Because you have such
everything
funky skirts.
I do is a conversation piece. Do you not know me?
I know. That's why I'm like, Max was one of the repertoire of icebreaker conversation pieces.
Sometimes
it wasn't something I was wearing.
No.
Separation.
Sometimes I feel it does take people who have a certain, maybe who are of a certain personality, who have naturally an ease of breaking the ice, to use the words I use. And sometimes, we withdraw and we're not the ones who can even make the step to go out, and then there's somebody, whether it's a friend or whether it's somebody we have not even known before, that really makes that first step and kind of pulls us out through that. And then it seems like it's sometimes only in that moment that you realize how thirsty you really have been. When somebody comes and offers you a cup of water, the cup of water was always there for you to take, but you just couldn't get the strength or whatever it takes to go grab the glass of water. So it takes somebody to pick it up and say, "Hey, here, take this, there's water." And then you realize, oh yeah, well, actually I was really thirsty.
Mike, I haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah.
How will I get there?
All
right.
That is a good question, but just to comment on what Danny said in regard to like the gateway to a new existence or a new kind of understanding.
A new greater experience.
Yeah. I think as you get older and as you experience these things more, it becomes easier and easier to, like if you learn from these experiences to take on more and more, kind of difficult experiences because they're because you know how that works, so even if it's the worst situation in the world, you know that there's going to be another day ahead where that's just another bottom that you're moving up from. And so I kind of feel like that is really the how is just kind of relating back to the past experiences, and then how did I do it before? How did it go before,
Yeah.
and how can I do
Right.
it better this time?
I can relate to that. Like oftentimes, what would set in with me is like a kind of mechanism which is like, oh, so this is really bad, and so you really feel bad. It's like, okay, so life, if that's what you have to offer to me, that the best you can give me? Is that your hardest shot? Like, and then I would remember what I went through and other things that happened to me. Like, I've been to worse. Is that really your hardest shot? I'm here to experience something. So give me your best shot then, because that's not what's gonna make me give up. So what else is there? So and that kind of would trigger something in me that would, okay, that's what it is, and it was worse. And if that was all, like, okay, it feels bad and it feels tough, but they can overcome it. So to have that,
But
to see, to know that you're gonna get out of it. I think that's what I'm hearing
Yeah.
when you're speaking, Michael. That kind of knowing that, okay, it's really bad, but there's, like you say, the sun's gonna go up tomorrow. Which is an easy thing to really live in Jamaica, or like sunny places, like places where Agnieszka lives and stuff, where that it's gonna be warm and cozy almost all year round, because just to know that the sun will be there tomorrow as well,
You
whatever happens
know,
is
funny
kind of comforting.
story about that warm and cozy comment, because so I moved to Victoria from Quebec, right? So all winter I'm like, oh, it's so warm, it's so great. Look, I put on a light sweater, I'm outside with the dog, I'm still in my pajamas, this is wonderful. A friend of mine moved here in February from Thailand. So the other day, I go swimming in a lake and it's warm. It's like 20 degrees, right? Celsius. 20 degrees. We're swimming in a lake. We're splashing. It's super nice, right? And she goes, my gosh, does it ever get warm here? Because, like, it still feels like winter. I'm like, what? I've never been swimming in May. I haven't been swimming in May for years. I mean, seriously, can you imagine swimming in May? That's so great. I'm just so happy that it's so warm. And she's like, oh, I just thought by May it would be actually warm. I'm like,
Look
well,
at
what
that,
do you
it's
mean
just
by
perception.
warm? She's like, well, like, 30 degrees. I'm like, why would you want it to be that temperature? That's like an oven. You
So-
don't want to live in an oven.
So if 20 degrees can be warm for you, is it possible then that if you're at rock bottom, if you hit it really hard, can that become actually something that is not rock bottom? How can you transform something that feels totally devastating or that feels ice cold for someone into something that feels like at least a little warm or not that bad? What is that mechanism that we can find out for? And I feel that's something very individual. Like we have to come up with a really individual solution for that, and pick out of the plate that is there. Like Adri has been serving a lot of examples, and I think all of the stories that you
Deirdre's
shared
good.
also. There's many different examples, and I think it's for everyone. It's recognized. There's a whole plate and a whole array of things that we can do, and just pick one and see if you like it, and if not, you put it back and you pick somewhere else.
For my friend, the solution is
I have
simple. Hang on, let me finish the solution for my friend. For her, solution is simple because she came back to Canada because she was recalled by the Prime Minister, right? Every Canadian was recalled. So she came here because they were recalled back to their home country. Victoria is the warmest place in the whole country. She had no other choice. If she wanted to be warm, this is as warm as it gets. It doesn't get any warmer. I mean, it probably gets warmer in the summer in other places, but overall average, this is the warmest. So she had no other possibility.
He's in a good place.
Exactly. She should be glad about that.
You wouldn't want to disobey your prime minister and
Right?
stay in the warm time.
Right?
absolutely not.
Absolutely.
that's that whole seeing the possibilities. That's the growth from after feeling grief and acknowledging it and putting it in its nice, in its special place.
Nice.
So the next one for this journaling exercises is, when will I know I belong? When will I know I'm done with this? Write an answer. You can write an answer of this on how calm and safe or satisfied you will feel. So you have your goal, you have your new identity, you have your goal, you have the relationships you're going to build, and then how calm and safe and satisfied you're going to feel with all of that. Anyone want to add anything to that last point for journaling?
What comes to my mind there is, like, I would set that goal again from a holistic view on us. Like, okay, what is my goal? How I'm going to feel physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Where I would map it out in that way, in details, and then kind of maybe. Physically, I'm gonna feel like ABC, and so put in some triggers. So when I feel like that's like, oh yeah, I'm there. So I don't forget that.
Is it like a signpost, like the direction you're pointing yourself towards, so you walk in that direction? So when you know what the desired outcome is in the next week, next month, next 3 months or whatever.
No, it's not about
kind of point yourself in that direction.
Yeah, it's not about the target, the end result. It's not about the end goal. It's about the direction towards where you're going. So creating a goal for attachment, I'm just going to volunteer at the my local community so I can get out, because I really just I need some human connection. It's been a month, and kind of just volunteering and going with that, not kind of focusing on, oh my gosh, talk to me.
It's a long game. Like, think about, like, I went to Quebec, I had bad time for 2 years, Cora Jane died, a couple months later I moved to Victoria, and I've been in Victoria for over a year now, or just about a year, and now I'm feeling like, okay, I can do stuff again. So, like, how long did it take? It was like a year and 3 months from when she died, or a year and 5 months, I guess.
I would say if somebody's going through grief, and especially if they've had multiple types of grief. So the 3 things that are most horrific in life is moving, divorce, and a death. And, then there's the natural disasters. But those are the 3 that are like critical. People can have heart attacks and die from experiencing these ones.
I like moving,
and so if somebody's experienced that, especially multiple times, I would give them probably 18 months of kind of just not their normal behavior, because they're just going through grief.
I don't think the moving was the bad part. I think 2 years without family or friends was like the one that have heavily weighed on me. But now I have you guys. I'll never be alone again.
Something that kind of comes to my mind is the idea of polarity, like the positive and the negative side of things. So what I'm kind of thinking is like the things that feel the most powerful in regard to the negative feelings that you're having. What is the opposite of that? So like whatever that thing that really just tears you apart or really kind of grinds into you, what is the opposite of that? And then, kind of try and visualize or imagine what the opposite of that is, or maybe reflect on some other time in your life when you had that opposite feeling, and what did that feel like, to more accurately kind of get yourself that picture of where you want to be, and what will be, like what you said, like the end goal. What will the end look like?
That reminds me of the saying where Gibran is talking about the weeping and the look into your heart, and you see the delight, that you're actually weeping about what delighted you. So that reminds me of what you just said, the polarity. I think those are the 2 polarities, right? And they have their place, and I think they need to be there, because if they're just like with electricity, you have to have a plus and a minus. If you only had minus, if you only had plus, then there, nothing really flows. So it's part of really the flow that is there. And then maybe the ability to detach to a degree that we're not that our experience is not compromised in a way, that we are fully engaged and devastated by those things that naturally happen in life. I'm not sure, like, if there's anyone among us who has not experienced, grief, trauma, and a sense of loss. So just by that fact, it seems that it's, is an intricate part of life, and we probably cannot change that. This is something that is happening and will happen many more times to us to certain degrees. But what we can change and influence is how we deal with it and how we position us.
Yeah, I think there's, honestly, I feel like, living a full life is one in which you challenge yourself, to experience more. And that usually brings about a lot of painful experiences as well, because, a lot of times what you perceive something to be, what your expectations are, isn't what is reality, or, and so having the ability to deal with kind of, the truth about things, the truth about reality is a skill that's developed. And, I think as you challenge yourself to do the things that, are more to answering like what you are is in your core, the more you really get to find out who you really are. And,
Yeah.
like I say, with the superpowers, it is like really finding your superpowers by challenging yourself to really find out who you are.
If you would visualize your life as a, going up and down, and that describes the life journey that you're on, as compared to like a flat line that goes straight through, then certainly the one that goes up and down is the longer one. And
absolutely,
and that would be the polarity then between the ups and downs.
I hold a little mantra for myself when I kind of go, like, I hit rock bottom, like, oh my gosh, that didn't work out. I didn't see that coming. I didn't plan for that. It's in my goals, and oh my gosh, that was terrible. I've learned to just accept that is just a learning, growing process, and that not to kick my own ass too much. I think I've said it once before on the show. Oh yeah, when I was doing my first ever bloody workshop, and that kind of just crashed and burned. So I think I was in there, and what I say to myself is that, okay, when I hit rock bottom, the only way to go is up. And that helps me, that like rewires my brain. Okay, all right, I've done it. I've hit rock bottom. Oh my gosh, it happened. Cool. So that means I get to go up now.
Sometimes you can go lower though, and you're not expecting it.
That's depression.
Oh, I've hit rock bottom. Oh no, there was a false floor.
Like, yeah, false floor. There is such a thing. It really is. It is a false floor. It's like what you think is rock bottom. It's the rock bottom that your mind can accept, and the rock bottom that your body actually goes to.
The different things.
Yeah.
Would you
you don't want to allow yourself to spiral that far down into depression, because then it's harder to see the light.
And
would
that's
you agree
where
that fear is flattening the curve? Because see
the development curve, maybe.
Lifeline, right? If you're talking about that lifeline going up and down, and we touched upon that, was it last week, about fear. So fear, it seems to me that fear, or being put in a state of fear, is dramatically flattening that line, because then you're afraid to take a risk, but you're also afraid, to step outside. So you're not exposing
so your life
yourself.
goes like this into a flat line. You might as well be dead.
Fear is flattening the line.
That's true, because there is no gain without risk. And you know what else? There is no joy without service. People think that they're rejoicing eating a chocolate cake by themselves, but in reality, if you share that chocolate cake, it'll taste better.
Yeah,
doesn't matter how big it is.
I was just saying, it depends on how big the piece is.
It doesn't matter. Imagine if it's one bite of cake and you share it with a friend. It's so much like there's giggling and, oh, we're going to cut this tiny little piece of cake in half. What?
Not with my children. There's not giggling, there's fighting.
I took over and we're like totally off topic. Is that what it is? Is that why she's looking like that? Are we off topic?
Possibly. It's
Oh.
possible.
Is that why she's
No,
looking like
it's the
that?
chocolate.
Oh, the chocolate. Oh, okay. Never mind.
We didn't even say chocolate. We just said
Hey.
cake.
Chocolate
Oh,
cake.
my
I said chocolate
brain
cake.
said
You
cake.
you said chocolate.
You know,
Chocolate
Yeah,
cake
my brain-
totally
I
can be
thought
an
cheesecake.
unexpected benefit.
I was thinking cheesecake too. There is a really good cheesecake that they make in this bakery just down the street.
Stop. Just stop.
Yeah, I know.
Shut
I
up.
haven't
tangent.
eaten yet, and it's like 10:30.
Michael, this is your job. Come on, get us back on track.
We only have 6 minutes.
Go, Deidre.
6 minutes.
Oh,
left.
Tony,
Okay, all right.
Tony left a comment. This is going to bring us back. Take action in the face of great anxiety and discomfort. It'll make you into a greater person. And Tony's certainly
Yeah.
done that. We like you.
That's why I always say, in spite of it, in spite of the whatever you're feeling, you're still going to get up and do it. That takes, I guess you could say, that takes a little will to be able to hold that space for yourself and go beyond yourself and do it anyway.
So Tony responded
so
again. He's, in all seriousness, needs some raspberry cheesecake.
Lovely. It's a wonderful image.
No,
I also
I
don't
hate you now.
discriminate.
No.
All cheesecakes.
No.
That's
are
right.
loved.
Their peach cheesecake is just as good.
Peach. I've never had peach cheesecake.
I've never had peach cheesecake. Now
be-
I want peach cheesecake.
Must be a Polish thing. I don't know. Go to Poland. Let's go to Poland.
Deirdre.
Yeah.
Are you
Deirdre.
paying? I'll go.
Okay,
Maybe
I'll
someday.
use an
Let's conclude this thing.
I'll use an example of my
conclude this
recovery
thing.
process with my grandparents. No, I'm mourning here. I'm pouring my damn heart out about my grandparents and the damn Christmas cards, and you're laughing your ass off at me. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Be
go-
careful.
go
Your angry
more.
part is trying to come out.
Oh, bring it on. Bring it on, like Donkey
said
Kong.
trying.
It's-
Almost like you were trying to imitate your angry part, which was funny to watch.
So,
So
We should
Okay,
just leave it
all right,
here and
how
go
I-
eat cheesecake, right?
I'm too hungry. I can't think straight. I'm like, okay, it's my show. It's my fault. I was really sick yesterday, guys. I sneezed. And so I've got a head cold. And and I didn't get my usual food that I usually eat at for breakfast, and so I missed breakfast.
Agnieszka,
cheesecake
you
or
are
is it
not
bread?
helping.
That's a loss. That's a loss too.
Offside.
You know, you lost your breakfast.
I'm about to lose
It
my
is
ever
something.
loving shit.
I have the same breakfast. I have like a beautiful routine. I missed out on my routine, and I haven't eaten breakfast or anything. It's 10:30. I'm tired, and everyone's talking about cake.
okay, I'll stop.
I officially
So,
hate you, Agnieszka.
No, you don't. So, this concludes our show about grief. We will be back next week. And it will be.
Well, hold on there. We've got a couple things to wrap up.
Oh, okay,
Well,
sorry.
I do want to kind of do a round robin and
So
let's
it's-
make sure we've got everything in order before we go.
But next week
So-
we're talking about daddy issues, and I certainly have some.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
Grand
how
Robin.
that's related to grief.
We're not naming the
Yeah, how
show
that's-
that, right?
No, the show has a better name. What is the show named?
Oh my god! Don't
Daddy
ask
void.
me.
Something about the daddy
I need
void.
yeah, father void. The hole in your the unknown hole in your life. Father void.
I can't pull it up without flashing you guys a chicken, so I'm not gonna do it.
Woo! Flash.
Just if I click,
So,
the chicken will show.
Let's just go around the room. What did you hear in this show that was powerful for you? So, Dennis, why don't you go first?
What did I hear that was powerful for me? Well, I certainly do appreciate everybody's perspective and everybody obviously sharing the same experience of loss and of grief, with different, different things that happen to you in life. So on the first view, it's our different situations. We are different individuals, we're unique individuals, but yet we share into that same feeling of loss, and we share in the necessity to overcome that and to find creative ways that work for us individually to go past that and to, you know, pick ourselves up and to climb up back out of the valley. And yeah, so I wouldn't even pick like any specific story or anything that you shared out, but that's really like a common thing that stood out for me. Okay, this show reminded me about the fact that we are all, you know, there's differences in between us, but yet we're all in the same boat in a certain way as well. So to remember that is something, you know, that I find inspiring and empowering. And yeah, just to see that on the outside we might seem different. You know, we have different skin colors, different hairstyles, we come from different corners of this world, but yet we also have at least as many similarities and things that we share in common. And recognizing that is giving me like the basic understanding that what we are doing right here now, which is sharing our experiences, learning from each other, and sharing that even with a wider audience, is definitely a way of going forward and of overcoming the difficulties that we have, in particularly loss and overcoming griefs in our lives.
Nishka, how about you?
Yeah, the not being alone. Because last year, I mean, I didn't know you guys last year. That was before we joined Autonomy, when all this stuff was happening, and I felt really alone, and I felt like I was the only person in the world, you know, grieving my baby. But now I see, well, especially in this show, it's really apparent to see that everybody's carrying the same grief and the same pain, and just maybe different labels, but the emotion is the same. So.
What about you, Willow?
I'd say the most important information that I got out of this was understanding the difference between delayed grief and masked grief. Because to be honest, I had kind of assumed they were the same thing. They are very similar. One follows the other. So they go kind of hand in hand. And things that go hand in hand are really easy to correlate as this will always happen. And this is the same thing. So that was really helpful. It is really important when you to see when someone is actively denying and delaying their grief, or like, you know, versus like completely ignoring it and pretending it doesn't exist, to be honest.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not even sure all the connections that's going to make for me, but I know that was a really important nugget of information. So thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to just, you know, in regard to what Dennis was talking about, the wavelength, you know, and the idea of, you know, living a full life is, you know, is one that we're going through the process, and going through the processes of, you know, the ups and the downs are certainly something we should be more well versed with. And then, Deirdre, I want to say, man, you ran a great show today. I thought you really put together a great package, and so that was awesome. But I'll let you guys have a last comment.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys. I'm hearing a lot of growth has happened just since I've been talking about grief and kind of recognizing it. When I first heard of grief, it was like, oh, is that what that is? It was like an aha moment. And in logotherapy, that's what I live for. That's that aha, that growth for you guys. All right, thank you.
All right, so with that, I guess we're wrapping it up.
I did look up. I flashed people the chicken, but I did look up the title, and it's "Are You Still Carrying the Father Wound?"
The father wound. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So look forward to that on Monday, 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time, Eastern Daylight Standard Time, and we'll be there. So.
Awesome.
Anybody got anything else? Let's just say goodbye. Thank you,
Let's
everybody.
do the outro.
Bye. Please join.
Hang on, I gotta play the outro. Then we say goodbye. Hang on.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh yeah, stop.